their public statement, the head of the Israeli Mossad denies a report that he went against Netanyahu and advised Congress not to boost Iran sanctions during negotiations. The fight in eastern Ukraine, officials from both sides say at least 41 Ukrainian soldiers and civilians are killed in 24 hours as the Ukrainian army retreats from the battleground of the Donetsk airport. And representatives from 21 countries descend upon London to meet on the strategy against the Islamic State terror group. The focus is on foreign fighters and how they travel.
The News Today with Lucy Aharish.
Good evening and welcome to the News Today. We begin tonight with a case of political intrigue and building tension within the U.S. government, the Israeli government, and between the two. The already strained relationship between Barack Obama administration and Netanyahu took another big hit over the last couple of days after the new Republican Congress invited Netanyahu to give a speech without the White House approval. A clear swipe at Obama and boost for Netanyahu at home. To make it more complex, Bloomberg published a report saying the Israeli Mossad went against Netanyahu, telling Congress that more Iran sanctions would be harmful. Over 12 hours after the story was published, the Mossad offered a rare formal denial, saying the agency chief had met with U.S. senators but did not oppose additional sanctions on Iran. To make sense of all of this and the implications inside the U.S., Israel, and Iran, we go tonight to our correspondents at the Israeli Ministry of Defense in Tel Aviv, Shai Ben-Ari, Amjad Abu Arafeh, and Leah Bardugo. But first, let's take a look back.
I did not consult with the White House. The Congress can make this decision on its own.
We welcome the Prime Minister of Israel to come and speak in America anytime.
As the leader of Israel, it's my responsibility to lead my people to peace.
Obviously, it's a little unusual to learn of an invitation from the Speaker's office.
We have ongoing discussions, the Secretary does, with Prime Minister Netanyahu about a range of issues.
But new sanctions passed by this Congress at this moment in time will all but guarantee that diplomacy fails.
Personnel within the Israeli intelligence field, this person was asked what the effect of sanctions would be, and this person answered that it would be like throwing a grenade into the process.
Yes, and to understand a little bit more about this not complex situation at all is former Israeli ambassador to Egypt, Yitzhak Lebanon. Ambassador Lebanon, thank you very much for coming.
Good evening.
And also Owen Alterman, research fellow at the INSS. Good evening. Thank you very much for coming.
My pleasure.
So, gentlemen, let's start. This is maybe the biggest no-no that Benjamin Netanyahu maybe can do towards the American administration at this point. Isn't it so?
Well, I had the impression that everybody is putting, the onus on Benjamin Netanyahu. But I think that you have three players, and each one of them has violated, the code of the protocol which exists, between countries. The first one is the Speaker of the House. Look, he has really the right, to invite anyone he likes, to invite. But when it comes to the head of the executive or the head of state, he has to go to the White House and the State Department in order to advise them and eventually also to take the okay for that. Because there are some implications at the level of the states between President Obama and Prime Minister Netanyahu when he is coming to the United States. The second thing is Benjamin Netanyahu or the office of the Prime Minister. He should advise the American ambassador here that, look, I received such invitation, and here again they violated this protocol. But the worst, in my mind, is our ambassador in Washington. He is not a professional, and this is why he didn't know that there is such kind of protocol. Whenever he receives such invitation, he should speak to the State Department immediately.
Allow me to ask another naive question. Really? No one knew in the United States that there is such kind of a protocol? No one knew that there is such kind of an invitation? No one knew that actually Benjamin Netanyahu is invited? Or someone just said or sent some kind of a message just send a message to Benjamin Netanyahu, tell him to come. Maybe it's good that he will come and give a speech at the Congress at this point.
If they knew and they closed their eyes and they did it in purpose, is bad.
Okay. Owen?
Well, all the evidence points to that being exactly what happened, and we've seen reports both from Bloomberg and from Haaretz today saying that this was essentially a deal cooked up by Ron Dermer, the Israeli ambassador in Washington, and John Boehner, the Speaker of the House. It's a little bit unclear still who exactly initiated this, but there have been contacts going back weeks at least, and maybe more, and that is it seems to be what happened.
Okay,
this was no accident.
So before we will continue talking, let's go to our correspondent, Shai Ben-Ari, at the Israeli Ministry of Defense in Israeli. Shai, are you ready? Yes? Can you hear us?
Yes, I believe we are.
Yes,
I can hear you, Lucy. We're having some trouble here, perhaps with the security officials.
Okay, so do you want to arrange this and then...
No, we'll have to come back to you later.
No problem, no problem. Shai, we'll get back to you just in a short while. So maybe Benjamin Netanyahu didn't like the first opening of this show. It got really fast at the Ministry of Defense, I have to say. Yes. So let's get back to business.
Look, what I want to clarify is, first of all, I think that this is good that the Prime Minister was invited. The Prime Minister of Israel to speak to the two houses. I mean, it's in terms of invitation and to come to the United States is a very positive thing. I think that on the way they behaved badly, all the three that I mentioned before, and we could easily avoid such kind of bad feelings between all the three if we stick to the protocol.
Who's trying to let's say, who's trying to upset who? Is it the Republicans who are trying to upset Barack Obama? Is it the Israelis who are trying to upset Barack Obama? Is it somebody else who's trying to upset the Israelis? Because there are a lot of good experts that I know about Iran that can come and speak about Iran and the danger of Iran. Why specifically Benjamin Netanyahu?
Look, you have the answer coming from the Speaker of the House. He said just now, he said, I don't have to advise, to take advice or to speak with the White House. I am free to invite anyone I want. And he wanted to show that he is fully independent by inviting the people he likes to invite to the House.
And just now we're seeing that Bloomberg is publishing again that the publishing about the Mossad is true. So, this is just getting more and more interesting.
Entre parentheses, I received an information that President Obama will not meet Bibi Netanyahu.
Correct. That was an announcement made today by the spokesperson of the National Security Council. What's especially provocative about that, a theory that member of Knesset Nachman Shai made this morning in Israel Radio, that not only will President Obama not meet Bibi, that wasn't actually formally known at that point, but it may be that Netanyahu doesn't even want to meet Obama. That the whole point of this meeting is to come and to speak before Congress, now it seems to attend the AIPAC conference in early March, but actually not to meet President Obama, which goes back to your question, Lucy, which is an excellent one. Who's trying to upset whom? And it seems like everybody's trying to upset everybody.
Yeah, it's like the kindergarten. I'm getting back to kindergarten.
He should cancel his trip.
He should... Oh, before I will take you on that.
And Bibi just a few days ago was trying to show he was the kindergarten teacher in his campaign.
Yeah, in his campaign. So he's right now showing that everybody is in the kindergarten, not only Tzipi Livni and Naftali Bennett. Let's go to our correspondent again. Now you are in a secure place, I see. Shai, let's talk about the fact that Barack Obama is not going to meet Benjamin Netanyahu. And this is not like providing any more, let's say, a good feeling between these two leaders.
Yes, this won't do wonders, let's say, for the Israeli-American relationship, and certainly the personal relationship that has always been rather frosty between Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Obama. Just in the past few minutes, we have received confirmation from the spokeswoman for the National Security Council, the U.S. National Security Council, Bernadette Meehan, that indeed President Obama will not be meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu during his visit to Washington at the beginning of March, though he will, of course, be speaking before a joint session of Congress. This, the official reason being that the U.S. administration has made clear it has no intention of influencing the Israeli elections. That is the public statement, and indeed, you could say, it wouldn't surprise anybody to say, really, that the Obama administration is not interested in Prime Minister Netanyahu winning the next elections. That is the situation. Really, when you talk about this kind of situation, you have to remember that, of course, this we're talking about a previous snub in the actual decision to come out in front of the cameras and actually suggest that the whole invitation to Washington was not done according to protocol in the first place. More on all of these developments in the following report.
So,
diplomatic tensions between Washington and Jerusalem have become rather commonplace in recent years, but the latest crisis in the tumultuous relationship between these two allies has raised more than a few eyebrows. It all began with the extension of an invitation from the Speaker of the House of Representatives, John Boehner, to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to speak before a joint session of the U.S. Congress to address the Iranian nuclear program and the threat of radical Islam. Boehner did not bother to clear the issue with the White House.
The Congress can make this decision on its own. I don't believe I'm poking anyone in the eye.
From their public statements, however, it is clear administration officials were not happy with the development.
Look, we welcome the Prime Minister of Israel to come and speak in America anytime. And obviously, it's a little unusual to learn of an invitation from the Speaker's office.
Netanyahu's speech, scheduled for March 3rd, would give him valuable airtime in a hugely complimentary setting just 2 weeks before the Israeli elections. Not many are surprised that the Obama administration seems hesitant to attach its blessing. Further complicating the matter was a leak made by senior administration officials to the Bloomberg News Network, who claimed that no less than the Israeli Mossad had made clear that new legislation on sanctions against Iran would cause talks with the Islamic Republic to collapse. The leak had been described by Israeli government officials as the Obama administration's revenge for Netanyahu's unorthodox trip to Washington. Secretary of State John Kerry elaborated further Wednesday evening.
One of the top intelligence personnel within the Israeli intelligence field, I won't name names, but this person was asked directly by a congressional delegation that visited there over the weekend what the effect of sanctions would be. And this person answered that it would be like throwing a grenade into the process.
More than 12 hours later, on Thursday, the unnamed official named himself, none other than the head of the Mossad, Tamir Pardo, whose office released the following statement.
On January 19, 2015, the head of the Mossad, Tamir Pardo, met with a delegation of U.S. senators at their request and with the approval of the Prime Minister. Contrary to what has been reported, the head of the Mossad did not say that he opposes imposing additional sanctions on Iran.
In a statement, Pardo also intimated that he was misunderstood by John Kerry.
Regarding the reported reference to throwing a grenade, the head of the Mossad did not use this expression regarding the imposition of sanctions, which he believes to be the stick necessary for reaching a good deal with Iran. He used this expression as a metaphor to describe the possibility of creating a temporary crisis in the negotiations, at the end of which talks would resume under improved conditions.
Whether or not Pardo's statement truly represents the whole story remains unclear, but it seems that any hope of truly repairing relations between the Netanyahu government and the Obama administration may have to be abandoned.
Okay, so in a case that Benjamin Netanyahu, and he will travel at the end, he will take the stage and he will speak about Iran. It will be a great opportunity to maybe do a copy-paste from the UN General Assembly speech and to put it again in front of the Congress. But let's say, do you want to tell me that he's not going to take the opportunity for some kind of a campaign, election purpose to try and present and get a support?
Lucy, candidly, this is not what worries me, really not. If he will do a campaign or not. The campaign should be done in Israel. But the problem, if he will proceed,
Yeah, but sometimes Benjamin Netanyahu thinks that he is running for the presidency of the United States and not running for the Prime Minister of Israel.
If he will proceed with his plans and he will come to Washington and not meeting the president, this is going to be a negative precedent in the history between the United States and Israel.
More than that, because if Benjamin Netanyahu will be elected in the next elections, he will have to deal for another 18 months, around 18 months, with Barack Obama. And this is not going to be the best work environment that these two can work in.
Lucy, it'll be 20 months, and I think both of them will be counting down every single month to try to get down to zero. Yeah, listen, obviously what Ambassador Lebanon is saying is true. This has impact far beyond the immediate event, or it could have an impact far beyond the immediate event. It's also true that Prime Minister Netanyahu, while he does care very much about the Iranian issue, and I think has put it above politics on many, many occasions, he is a political animal. He understands Israeli politics very well, and he will try to use this for its Israeli election impact. In fact, as you know, but some of our viewers may not, in Israel there are strict laws against television stations broadcasting what's called election propaganda in the 60 days before the election date. And the Meretz Party has filed an appeal to the Elections Commission asking that this speech not be carried on Israeli television because it would potentially be campaign propaganda.
And I will add to that.
But this is not a propaganda. It is considered as a political speech.
We'll see what the commission says.
But look, Lucy, if I were Benjamin Netanyahu, I would play it chic. I would say to Obama, okay, I understand. I'm not coming. I will be re-elected on the 17th of March, and then I will come as a re-elected prime minister. So everybody will be happy, and he should send his inexperienced ambassador to explain that to the Speaker of the House.
And the ambassador also
Ambassador
is there's an investigation against him initiated, I think, by a member of Knesset, although I'm not sure about that,
I don't know.
saying that he has been involved in electioneering on behalf of Netanyahu and that he may actually face
This is not the first time that Benjamin Netanyahu is opening some kind of a front with the President of the United States, and it also happened with Clinton in 94, in 99, I'm sorry, when he was invited and he did meet with President Clinton. This is not the first time that this is happening. How come Mr. Security, how come the Prime Minister of Israel that has that for his opinion, the relationship with the United States is really important. He is talking to the Americans in the way that maybe the Americans understand, and he doesn't understand that this is not the way to work with the Americans. This is not the way to go and point the finger in their eyes and tell them, I'm coming, whether you like it or not.
Probably he does. But in my eyes, he's wrong. But he does. He don't understand.
So what is it? Is it him being under pressure?
I think...
Is it him reading the polls in Israel and saying, okay, I need to do something to gain more support?
He's reading the minds of the Americans, the support in the Congress and in the Senate, and he's behaving accordingly.
No, I think there's two issues at play. Number one is the Israeli political calendar, which we've already talked about. Although it should be said, a lot of the political commentators here and political journalists, especially this morning, were saying that they don't think this speech is likely to have a major impact, even if it were to be shown on television, which it probably will be, but that it won't have a major impact on the results. Now, since those reports, since those commentaries, it's been moved up a few weeks, but still. The second thing at play, of course, is the Iranian issue itself. And beyond simply the rhetoric about Iran, there's a major vote going to be taking place in both houses of Congress in the next few months about these proposals of potentially putting on sanctions on Iran if there's no deal by the current deadline of June 30th, or at least of having the deal having to become before Congress for its approval. So there's these big votes coming before Congress where in the the Obama administration has said they'll veto. So the legislation would need 2/3 support even in the Senate, and that's not an easy haul. And Netanyahu is trying to make that happen.
So what let's go deeper into the Iranian issue. Just a few days ago, there was an allegedly Israeli attack in Syria, and in this attack, a big general was Iranian.
It appears it's not so big, so high general.
So let's say an Iranian general was killed. Israel, although it said that it didn't take responsibility on the attack in Syria, but it sent some kind of an apology that Israel didn't know that there is an Iranian general among the people who were there.
I mean, whoever carried out the attack
didn't know. Really, it's like so complicated. Even our viewers won't understand how complicated the situation is. But going into this issue, is it the right time right now, after Israel doing such a mistake, after Israel is apologizing and saying, oh, we didn't know that this is an Iranian general, is it the right time actually to go and impose more sanctions on Iran when the Mossad is actually saying this is not the way to deal with Iran right now?
Well, in your question, you complicated the whole situation.
I complicated it?
Yeah.
The situation is already complicated.
You see, I will try to simplify the situation. Number one, in such kind of let's say, attack, and presumably, I'm not saying that Israel did it, but in such attack, you do not do it if you don't know who is in the convoy. I mean, you should know 100%, if not 200%, who is in the convoy. It's not, like in the in the sweepstake, the lottery, and I mean, you do it that way. It doesn't work that way.
Especially not with Israel.
And you have so many people, professionals and high decision makers, let's say, involved in that let's say, the fact that they say that we didn't know, I do not accept it, personally.
So why to send the so-called apology? Why?
But it was contradicted by another security guy who says, no, there is no such statement coming from our institution. So this is the fight that we see between the Mossad and Bloomberg, etc. Secondly, we just heard from the statement coming from the Mossad. He said that Pardo, the head of the Mossad, used this terminology, throwing a grenade into the peace process, but he wanted to say something completely different.
Which is?
He says, it is, against, to do it and to make a crisis in the discussions with the Iranians and come back in a better position. But he said that.
And you're saying that I complicated things?
I simplified.
So if we're looking, is it the right timing to go and speak about Iran? And maybe, especially now, especially when there is such great tension in the north of Israel, waiting for some kind of a reaction from Hezbollah or maybe from Iran about the recent attack, is it the right timing to go and speak against Iran when everybody knows what is your opinion, when everybody knows what Benjamin Netanyahu thinks about Iran?
Well, I don't think the tension in the north is the big consideration here. The point is, the first question I think Israeli leaders should ask is the sanctions policy a good idea? Is it a good policy? And this is what may be a disagreement between the Prime Minister and the Mossad there. If it's decided that the sanctions legislation would be a good idea, I personally think it's perfectly fine for Israel to lobby the U.S. Congress and to make its voice known, and to lobby the administration for that matter, and make its views known about what the policy should be. After all, we all saw a few days ago with the joint press conference between Obama and Prime Minister Cameron of Great Britain. Prime Minister Cameron himself lobbied members of Congress. Why couldn't the Israeli government do the same? The problem isn't that. The problem is the method, the manner. The problem is the method. The fact that this visit was cooked up, apparently behind Obama's back, and with Netanyahu's person and John Boehner essentially working on it together. And it's the very forceful public nature of it, and frankly the confrontational nature of it vis-a-vis the administration. That's the problem. The approach should be much, much more low profile.
You want to say something?
The problem is that you just say that the president, in his speech, he said that he's going to veto if the Congress is going to put some sanctions.
Right.
Secondly, the sanctions will be postponed until June the 1st. They will not be imminent. It's not something that they are going to do it immediately. Right. And the third point is, if the Senate and the Congress would like to change the president's decision, they need 2/3 of the votes. Right. So if I were the Prime Minister, if I'm coming and speaking about Iran now at this specific time, this is an exercise in futility.
No, I don't think it's an exercise in futility, because again, as you mentioned yourself, that getting the 2/3 vote is not an easy haul, especially or even for Israel, which has so much support on Capitol Hill. It's not an easy haul when the administration has labeled this as such a priority in its foreign policy, and it will take members of its own party to go against it. That I agree with, and therefore I think it's legitimate not only for pro-Israel groups in the U.S. to lobby on this, but for the Israeli government itself to be lobbying. But it should be done in a totally different way.
So let's see. We asked today the Israelis, so with the Mossad reportedly telling Congress no to more sanctions against Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, we asked Israelis on the street which approach they think is right.
It doesn't look to help much, because I think the situation is the same than 2 years or 3 years ago, or I think it looks like they don't care about the sanction.
I think that Netanyahu's problem is that he's too busy threatening the people instead of dealing with the burning issues inside the country, especially the economic issues.
I don't think we should irritate the Iranians. They have many problems of their own with the oil prices and many other things. We shouldn't spark more scandals, as we are already deep in a mess.
I think that they should continue to impose sanctions until they reach an agreement.
This is a lot of, let's say, in one way or another, this is a battle of egos. This is a battle between egos. And let's face it, because Barack Obama has 20 months, like you were saying, until he will end his presidency. And we know that right now the power that he has is bigger on foreign issues than domestic issues. So if Barack Obama wants right now to just, let's say, to push Benjamin Netanyahu to the corner, he can say to Benjamin Netanyahu, you can say whatever you want. I'm not going to put any sanctions on Iran. I'm not going to do right now anything about Iran. And you can just go and speak with the entire world if you want. It won't help you.
Look, this is not only Iran. You see, I think that we should join forces with the United States now, particularly. Look, we have the question of Hamas. We have the question of the Palestinian issue. We have the fight, against terrorism. We have, what happened now in Syria, etc. Look, we have a lot of challenges. Probably in the mind of Benjamin Netanyahu, maybe he is right. I'm not saying that he's not right in his own mind, but I say play it chic, really, and postpone it, and you will get 2 or 3 more seats in their elections.
Chic, Israeli? Really?
Yeah.
Owen.
Well, first of all, I think we let both President Obama and Prime Minister Netanyahu off easily. There are, of course, 24 months until Obama is out of office and 22 months until the election, so there's still plenty of time for friction. Look, this is a high priority issue for Prime Minister Netanyahu, and he's labeled it as such. And again, I think it's legitimate for him to make his position known, even if it is a strong view, but it has to be done in a different way, and in a way that's, I think, frankly, more likely to succeed, because I do think that there's a strong chance that this could backfire, that this could make it much, much harder for Democrats in Congress to break with the administration, Democrats in the Senate to break with the administration, which is what's needed in order to override the veto. And I also wonder whether this is actually going to be good for Prime Minister Netanyahu politically. It could backfire on him, too.
Where it will put the Democrats.
It's in a very, very hard situation. Look, they're already in a hard situation, Lucy. Their own president is taking out his pen at the State of the Union and saying that he'll veto this legislation. We've had one of his aides saying that this is for his foreign policy the equivalent of the health care bill, meaning the centerpiece, and he has 2 more years left, and as you said yourself and as he said himself on Tuesday night, he's not tethered by elections.
Gentlemen, chic, you said? Chic. I'm playing it chic, and I'm ending this part of the show for now.
This is the only way.
Thank you.
He can go to Washington 2 weeks later.
Thank you very, very much for being with me in this part. We will continue playing it chic for the next part in 2 minutes. Don't go anywhere, at least in the news today. In a rare public statement, the head of the Israeli Mossad denies a report that he went against Netanyahu and advised Congress not to boost Iran sanctions during negotiations. The fight in eastern Ukraine, officials from both sides say at least 41 Ukrainian soldiers and civilians are killed in 24 hours as the Ukrainian army retreats from the battleground of Donetsk airport. And representatives from 21 countries descend upon London to meet on the strategy against the Islamic State terror group. The focus is on foreign fighters and how they travel. Welcome back to the news today. London is hosting a meeting of the International Coalition Against the IS today, focusing on the threat of foreign fighters joining the terrorist group. Ahead of the meeting, Iraqi Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi said his country has countered the IS on several fronts, but Iraq is still facing a real crisis. Ayman Siksik has more.
21 members of the 60-nation international coalition against the IS arrived in London Thursday to work out the next steps in the U.S.-led effort against the terrorist group. The U.S. military confirmed this week that coalition forces conducted only 13 airstrikes in Syria and 10 in Iraq within recent days. Ahead of the meeting, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry met with co-host and British Foreign Secretary Philip Hammond.
Now, in January, in our 4th month, having stopped ISIL's advance in Iraq, having negated their resources, their capacity to move foreign fighters to a significant degree,
This conference is not just about the military operation in Iraq, it's about the other strands of this campaign as well. And we're very clear that undermining the narrative of ISIL, interdicting the flow of foreign fighters, is as important as the military campaign itself.
Iraq, one of the two central theaters of operation for the coalition, may also be where 2 Japanese citizens are still held captive by the IS. Tokyo said Wednesday that the country is in a race against time to save the hostages. So far, forces of the US-led campaign have flown 500 sorties against the IS. In Syria, Kobani and Raqqa saw the largest number of airstrikes, while Mosul, Erbil and Sinjar suffered most hits on Iraq. The meeting in London marks the first time leaders have met since this month's Paris attacks that left 17 dead. The movement of foreign fighters and their recruitment by the IS will be high on the coalition's agenda.
And linked to the fight against IS in Iraq and Syria, Syria's interim opposition government said today it had received $6 million from the U.S., the first direct American support for the group. The aid is aimed at development and relief project in, quote, areas liberated by the moderate Syrian opposition, including food, public services, and support to local consuls. The country's opposition is meeting today in Cairo on potential future peace talks. And with me right now from London is our correspondent there, Jonathan Sashadoti. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good evening.
So what they understood today in the meeting in London that they didn't understand before?
Well, the Iraqi foreign minister spoke, saying that there had been a slow start in the training of Iraqi forces, but he felt that now that was up and running, and there were discussions today of many issues that had stood in the way of progress against ISIS. But now they're working on the successful network with regional powers, and today's discussions will strengthen, he said, that coalition against ISIS.
But it's not only coalition against ISIS, because today, and I'm really, I'm a small person here in Israel, but they understood that this is also about intelligence and about understanding, re-educating these people and about re-educating these minorities and maybe trying to handle the minorities in Europe in a different way. These are subjects that were talked on?
Well, today's main focus was, of course, ISIS and what's going on in that region. But John Kerry was more specific, yes. He said it was important to note that the meeting that took place today took place in the context of the members of that global coalition against ISIS, which came together for that first time in Brussels with 60 countries representing a wide range of views and priorities, and that those 60 countries do have more of a full picture, that today was sort of the core group. And the things that he focused on were the ideas of providing security assistance, strengthening the capacity of Iraq to stand on its own, he said, protecting our homeland. So I guess that covers what you're saying, American homeland security and, of course, homeland security here in the UK and in Britain, disrupting the flow of foreign fighters. There you go, another fundamental part of the strategy, because the flow of fighters leaving from Europe, for example, towards the Middle East going to join in that ISIS fighting, there's also that big fear that those people coming back here can then carry out terrorist attacks like those we saw in France just recently, and those which there is a suspicion are being planned even as we speak in the rest of Europe.
Yes, Jonathan Sashadoti, thank you very, very much for this. And in Yemen, the political crisis has reached a new level. The cabinet has offered its resignation to President Abdel-Rabbah Mansour Hadi after a 2-day-long siege by Shiite Houthi gunmen. Houthis have been standing guard in the capital of Sana'a following days of fighting that resulted in the Shiite group nearly taking over the city. Since the attack, Houthi fighters have remained outside the presidential palace and at the president's private residence. UN envoy to Yemen, Jamal Ben Umar, arrived in the country today to head a meeting of political rivals. And to understand a little bit more about that is with me the senior Middle East analyst, Ali Wakad. Good evening. Thank you very much for coming. So what is... We are feeling the tension in Yemen in the last few weeks. Now it's reaching to another boiling point. What is next?
Yeah, it's true, Lucy. The situation reached a new peak in which the rebels imposed the resignation of the government and of the president. Yesterday we talked about a coup that is taking place, and this coup this evening is fulfilled without seeing the Houthis entering into the presidential palace. It's simply they imposed the resignation of the government. There was an agreement signed yesterday, a ceasefire agreement that guaranteed to the Houthis more representation in the institutions of the state, in the parliament, and being taking a growing part in the decision making in the Yemenite institutions. And the peak of this evening is the resignation of both the president Mansour Abd Rabbu Hadi and the Prime Minister Khaled Baha, which is explained by the fact that the institutions in Yemen are totally paralyzed. Nothing can be done in Yemen because of the simple fact that the Houthis are imposing their siege over all the compounds of the government.
So what does it mean? What does it mean right now for Yemen? Because you are talking about a coup without violence.
No, there was violence, but limited violence. Still, dozens of people. Not today, at least because of the agreement that was reached yesterday. But even after the agreement, the president and the government resignation shows that maybe there is some intervention from abroad, mainly the Saudis, and that want to see the situation escalate in order to promote an intervention of the international community. And I'm not sure that the international community is ready now to play any role in the Yemenite file.
Yes, Ali Waked, thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Lucy.
And we're going to Ukraine. Fighting in Ukraine is escalating once again. German Chancellor Angela Merkel said the sanctions on Russia will not be lifted despite the agreement that reached yesterday in Berlin between Ukrainian and Russian diplomats to pull back their heavy weapons. Here's I-24 News reporter Ori Shapira with the latest.
Combat in Ukraine intensified Thursday, making it one of the deadliest days the country has known since the fighting began nearly 1 year ago. Ukrainian officials said at least 41 Ukrainian soldiers and civilians were killed over the last 24 hours in eastern Ukraine. 13 of them died in the rebel bastion city of Donetsk when artillery shells slammed into a bus. Ukrainian Prime Minister Arseniy Yatsenyuk accused pro-Russian rebels of carrying out the attack.
Russian terrorists have today committed another horrible act against humanity, and responsibility for that lies with the Russian Federation.
Earlier that day, the Ukrainian military spokesman admitted that the government forces had withdrawn from the new terminal of the Donetsk airport after a long, intense battle for control that wrecked it. This worrying escalation comes after Ukrainian and Russian officials agreed on a dividing line from which both sides will withdraw their heavy weapons. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, who met his Ukrainian counterpart in Berlin Wednesday, praised the agreement. He also said that the sanctions imposed on Russia by the West were not discussed in the meeting.
Sanctions aren't our problem. They're the problem of those who brought the sanctions themselves and now don't know how to get out of that vicious circle.
The meeting in Berlin paved the way for a new peace summit in the Kazakhstan capital of Astana, a summit that was supposed to take place last week and was cancelled following the escalation. However, even if a meeting does eventually take place and a long-term agreement will be reached, it is hard to see how this will affect the situation in Donetsk and Luhansk, where a vocal part of the population sees itself as a part of Russia.
Yes, and with me right now from Kiev is journalist Vladimir Solohu. Good evening. Good to see you again, Vladimir.
Good evening. Good to be back with you
again. Vladimir, let's start. We're talking about the escalation again, about this current situation. What are the recent developments in this story?
Well, the situation is very tense in the east of Ukraine, and unfortunately tensions are rising with each passing day. For example, just 9 days ago, a civilian bus was hit by a rocket, resulting in 13 deaths and more than a dozen wounded. And just today, early in the morning, in the center of in Donetsk, which is a separatist stronghold, following a mortar shelling on the bus stop, which is the rush hour, the people were traveling to work. A lot of people were killed, and there are a lot of casualties. There are different reports on the exact amount of people, civilians, which were killed following this mortar shelling earlier today in Donetsk. But the number of deaths is ranging from 10 to 13, and more than 20 people are wounded, heavily wounded. And of course, the epicenter of all the increased military activity in the east of Ukraine is the airport. The airport was under the control of the Ukrainian army, of Ukrainian forces, since June, and it has a very symbolic meaning to the Ukrainian fightings, because throughout more than 240 days, Ukrainian soldiers, Ukrainian fighters were holding to the grounds of the airport, and today it was confirmed that the main terminal of the airport was completely destroyed, and Ukrainian forces were pushed away from the airport and are now controlling only some separate buildings of the airport complex. So the situation is very tense, and there are also reports of the heavy fighting throughout other towns and cities in eastern Ukraine, and it looks like the separatist fighters are trying to advance further to the west and to the south.
So, Vladimir, with everything that you're telling me, this new agreement for pulling back heavy weapons, apparently it's not going to actually happen.
It doesn't look like that. The Ukrainian side is continuously calling on Russia to take away the Russian mercenaries fighting in the eastern Ukraine, to stop supplying weapons and ammunition to the separatists, and Russia is calling on Ukraine to stop shelling, to stop fighting as well, to stop killing civilians, and these accusations are flying back and forth across the table between Ukraine and Russia, and it doesn't look like any party is ready to sit down and negotiate.
It's unbelievable. People are actually accusing one another for stop killing people, and they're killing people themselves. It's unbelievable. Vladimir Tolohub, thank you very, very much for this conversation with us. And now to economy. And with me to take a look at economy is financial analyst Lionel Friedfeld. Good evening.
Good evening, Lucy.
So let's talk a little bit about the economy in Europe, not in Eastern Europe, because it seems that it's not going very well there, but...
Actually, in Europe, it's actually an historical day because the ECB, the European Central Bank, decided to do a quantitative easing plan like the Fed did in the US in 2012. And basically, they're going to put a 1,100 billion euro to buy back bonds, either private or public bonds. Basically, it's a stimuli plan. Each month, they're going to inject into the economy 60 billion euro.
60 billion euro. What does it mean right now? It's a big boost to the economy?
It will be a big boost to the economy. Markets are very positive tonight. Basically, two signs. The interest rates are going down. The 10-year bond, let's say the French bond, is trading to a historical low at 0.5%. The German bond, 0.4%. The currency, the euro, is now 1 euro equals 1.15 US dollars. So we're expecting that the currency are going to go to a direction at the end of the year for 1 euro equals 1 US dollar. So basically, it's a major plan for Europe.
So, like you said, it's a major boost for Europe, and of course, it gave like a major boost also to the forum in Davos.
Yeah, definitely. At Europe, it's a big boost, but there is one remaining question. Obviously, in the U.S., you remember that Janet Yellen and Ben Bernanke did these stimuli plans. They injected more than $80 billion into the U.S. economy, and that's why the U.S. is doing so great today. But also, the U.S. also gave competitive advantage. They used the shale gas to give great advantage to U.S. corporates. If Europe is not building competitive advantage for large European corporates, basically they have to build up European corporates like Airbus company, but in different industries.
Lionel Friedfeld, thank you very, very much. At least some good news for Europe. Thank you very much. And a surprising development in Argentina in the case of the prosecutor found dead hours before he was set to testify against the country's president. Premier Cristina Kirchner said today that she is convinced it was not a suicide, as has been speculated since. Alberto Nisman was investigating the 1994 attack on a Jewish center in Buenos Aires that left 85 people dead and an alleged government cover-up of the suspect. Moving to elections in Israel, election season in Israel, I-24 News reporter Uri Shapiro looks at the short history of one of the most promising parties of the 2015 elections, the right-wing Jewish Home Party.
A union of several small right-wing parties is aiming to hit the jackpot in the next Israeli elections, becoming, according to polls, the third largest party in parliament. The key to its success: disappointment from the leading Likud party, a charismatic leader, and a wave of change.
Something new is starting for the people of Israel. When I see religious and secular, ultra-Orthodox, Druze and Arabs all united around the Jewish Home Party, I believe we can do good for this wonderful country.
It was formed in 2008 as the traditional national religious party that represented the religious Zionist movement, merged with the National Union Party and Kuma. Although the first years of the joint list were not so promising, change came in 2012. It was brought by Naftali Bennett, a businessman and former chief of staff to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The young appealing leader took over the leadership of the party and in the 2013 elections propelled it to no less than 12 seats. Now, when the polls show they may become the third largest party in parliament, Bennett has even bigger aspirations for the future.
So today we really made history, and let me be clear. The day is near that the Jewish Home will lead the state of Israel.
A brief look at the Jewish Home platform shows that the party aims to fight against those who attempt to transform Israel into a state of its citizens. Regarding the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, the party proposes annexing Area C in the West Bank, an area that contains at least 340,000 Jewish settlers and around 300,000 Palestinians, according to a UN report. And on the socio-economic issues, the Jewish Home holds a liberal agenda, as it supports closing the gaps through education and promoting a free market. Naftali Bennett and the Jewish Home seem to be the growing power of elections 2015. They won the hearts of the settlers and those who are looking for an alternative right-wing leadership in the country. But only after the March elections will we see if the party can make a real shift and become a national party instead of a sectoral one.
Yes, big surprise, the Jewish Home Party. And for a look at today in history, with me is I-24 News correspondent Danny Swibel. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you very much for coming. So let's go 20 years ago to the Beit Lead massacre.
I don't know if you remember, a lot of Israelis I speak to definitely remember it very clearly. On January 22nd, 1995, a terrorist actually went to this major junction on Sunday morning, which is like a Monday morning in the U.S. and the rest of the world, and he actually detonated himself, killing a lot of soldiers who were returning to base, reservists, and a similar tactic, employing this tactic of then once people respond to the scene, then another terrorist came and blew them up. And this is particularly intense as yesterday Israel and Tel Aviv specifically experienced a terrorist attack. Yeah. So what does this mean to us 20 years later? Well, the Islamic Jihad, this was actually, at that time, their first terrorist attack that they had done on their own. Before, they had only assisted Hamas. So this was what they first did to really set the stage for what they were going to do in their career.
Yeah, and it's amazing to see right now the situation between Hamas and the Islamic Jihad in the Gaza Strip specifically with the division between these two fractions.
So yes, they definitely collaborate, but 20 years later now, they are really a force to be reckoned with in Gaza, and Hamas actually worries about some of the tactics that they use, because sometimes maybe from Hamas's standpoint, they're considered too extreme. Hamas is starting to to maybe perhaps play the game a little bit. Islamic Jihad, even after ceasefires are made, Islamic Jihad sometimes takes it to the next level, and they are perhaps the future of Gaza.
You know, these images that we're seeing, these are really horrific images, and maybe we got a reminder for these images just yesterday with the terror attack that occurred in Tel Aviv. But these kind of attacks, we don't see them in Israel anymore, like the explosive and the suicide bombers attacks, because in one way or another we see that the security arrangement between Israel and the Palestinians is working, and these cells are not able to, let's say...
That's correct. These cells were more of an organized unit, and now what we're seeing now is perhaps these lone wolf attacks, which is a lot harder to stop. And so, anyway, what ends up happening after these attacks is always just saying, listen, now we definitely can't make peace with the enemy. Definitely, they are the other now. And we hope that these trends, as they have for the last 20 years, don't continue for the next 20 years.
Yeah, and unfortunately, right now, we're dealing with something completely else. Danny Swibel, thank you very, very much for coming to the studio.
Thank you.
I-24 News reporter Rui Shapiro brings us a moving story of Kay Wilson, a British Israeli who was almost killed in 2010 in a Hamas terror attack last summer. Kay also gave refuge to Mohammed Zorbi, a young Arab from Nazareth who faced threats from the Arab community after posting a pro-Israeli video on YouTube. Here's her story.
Born in the UK, Kay Wilson came to Israel in the mid-1980s and became a tour guide. Everything changed for her in 2010 when she and her friend Christine Loken were attacked by two Hamas terrorists in the Jerusalem forest.
And I hear the Arabic Allahu Akbar, and he starts stabbing me in the back, and I fall to the ground. And my friend Christine Loken, Zichron Alavracha, she's like 5 feet away, and she's being chopped up in front of my eyes. So I played dead. I just prayed, God, give me one more chance.
Christine Loken was killed. Kay survived. But this was just the beginning of a process of healing, which, as she put it, never ends.
You get on with your life, it evolves into another thing, or if you've buried a kid, there's no closure.
In July 2014, Mohammed Zoabi, a 70-year-old Muslim from Nazareth, sparked outrage when he spoke out in the social media against the abduction of the 3 Israeli teens who were kidnapped and killed in the West Bank by Arab terrorists.
Bring them back. And you better bring them back now.
Following this act, which was controversial within his community, Muhammad received death threats and was forced to flee his home. Kay, who knew Muhammad through a mutual friend, decided to take a stand and offered to hide him in her house. Kay admits that hosting an Arab under a roof wasn't always easy for her.
And one of the things that was hardest for me was to overcome hearing Arabic. The last words I hear was Allahu Akbar. On the one hand, I'm looking at Muhammad and I see a kid. I don't see an Arab. But then I hear him speaking on the phone to his mom, and it's in Arabic.
But despite the obstacles, the odd couple found a common ground.
It was definitely difficult, to be far away from home. But the moment I saw her, the moment I felt her great desire to help me, despite what she had to go through, I felt home.
Kay is now lecturing for Stand With Us, an Israeli information group. She and Muhammad are still in close contact, and hope their story may inspire others to take a chance and get to know the neighbors as people rather than as objects.
I think the whole story, the narrative, brought together this idea that we're just two people. We're two people, and you can actually multiply that across the Middle East.
Two people. And now to sports. And with me right now is the host of I-24 News Sports Magazine, Jonathan Regev.
Hi.
Hi. How are you? All good?
Yes, yourself?
I'm good, and I'm really worried about the Spanish Cup.
Why? And why is that?
No, I don't know.
Because Atletico Madrid lost?
Yes.
Yes, I'm worried too, but let's remember one thing. It's the first leg. They hosted in Barcelona. We host. I can say we. I don't care. Yeah. As if I'm playing. Atletico Madrid is hosting the second leg next week at the Vicente Calderón. We should say that Barcelona was far better, and they should have scored first. Here, Luis Suarez, his shot went up up to the skies. And here comes the goal, a penalty, a controversial penalty, which probably was. It was probably a good call by the referee, Busquets from Barcelona, going down in the area. Leo Messi actually missed the penalty. The goalkeeper stopped it, but Messi was first to the rebound. Barcelona wins 1-0 next week at the Vicente Calderón, the second leg.
He's still upset, I think, that he didn't get the
Ballon d'Or thing, yeah, the Cristiano thing. That's all they care about.
It's still affecting him.
Yes,
I think so. Let's go to the scandal with the trophies being stolen.
Yes, this is a big story in the UK. Trophies of Team Red Bull, one of the most successful teams in Formula 1, have been stolen last month. This is how CCTV images show how these people came in with a car, broke the glass, and stole 60 different trophies. That happened last month.
What are they going to do with them?
Sell them. Hopefully, it's gold and silver, and someone's going to buy. Apparently, many of those trophies stolen were replicas. So it's not worth. At least, if you judge the money, it's not worth a lot. Emotionally, that of course is something else. Look how they treat it. 60 different trophies were stolen. Out of them, 20 were already found, but 40 are missing. And of course, British police is hoping these images will help.
Someone will actually sell them. Really, it's not going to get in one way or another to the police.
Yes, it will. But then, there's
smart move.
There's black market. There's trafficking these things, and the British police is hoping these images will help track the people and track the trophies.
So show us images of things that you're afraid to do.
So are you?
Yes.
But yes, we're speaking about the X Games in Colorado, and this is the women's super pipe event. Beautiful, beautiful event. It was snowing, as you can see, but that didn't stop Maddie Baumann from winning this event.
More flying people.
Yes, as I wish I were, but I'm not. Maddie Baumann wins this event for the third straight time.
Again.
Tell them to go.
Again, I need to tell him to stop screaming in my ear. Jonathan Regev, thank you very much for that. After my editor will stop screaming in my ear, we will be back for the I-24 News election debate. Don't go anywhere. Elections 2015.